Hi everybody, this is Mumbles, and so today I decided we're going to play Beginner's Guide. I've actually tried to do a video about this game before, because I really liked it when it came out, and it really stuck with me, and I actually play it probably once a year since it came out. But the last video I did, I just stopped playing it for some reason, and I'm not like 100% sure why that was. I don't have the recording anywhere. I don't remember why I stopped playing it, but I do know that this game is unique in the sense that not a lot of people talk about it. And that's right, I've got two cats in here and my snake, but my snake doesn't make any noises, so. But anyway, this game evoked a lot of emotion from people when it came out. There's, I would say, 5 hours of debate after it came out whether or not the people in it are real. One of them is real, one of them is not real. But it felt so visceral and honest that it almost felt like everything was real about this game. And some people have said that this game is something that almost defies criticism. And I think in a sense that makes sense because the whole game is about looking at someone else's work. And so it's a fictional person's work, but essentially in order to criticize this game, it's like, well, I think that his interpretation of this game, which is fictional, is blah, blah, blah. So I think instead of trying to pick this game apart, we're going to play it together, and I'll explain why I think, at least for me, I had a pretty strong reaction to it and the different kind of feelings that it evoked for me, and the different, thought. You go down a couple different rabbit holes with this game. So anyway, I thought we'd play. We're going to have Davey talking to us, and we're going to, talk back a little bit and just relax and have a good time, and that's what we're going to do. Not that this game is necessarily a good time. This isn't Stanley Parable. It's funny how a lot of indie games start like this, or at least they did for a little while. I don't know if they do anymore.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing The Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011.
Oh, do you guys remember 2008 to 2011?
That
was over
Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town,
I'm gonna let him talk before I talk.
Scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day, he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
Oh, God. Oh, we were all just babies back then. Okay, so before we go any farther, it was very humorous to me how much of a YouTuber he sounded like. And I think I can't remember when this game came out, but with the amount of time that this came out and how it is now, people still sound like this when they're analyzing games. And it's just funny. It's almost like I don't know. It's just funny. It sounds a lot like YouTubers, and I think that was on purpose. But also, once again, like, you can't dive too deep into this game. So, anyway, when this came out, the way that Davey talks is so genuine, and the fact that he, like, shares his email, come on. You, like, almost immediately kind of think to yourself, like, oh, like, is this real? Like, what's happening? Is this a real person he's talking about? And another cool thing about this game is that it's kind of a walk back in time. When I really started playing games and, like, being mumbles, it was around 2009. So this is like
Escape from
the era.
And it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
It's funny that we're starting out with this one because it's so, like, hectic compared to the other ones that he takes us through.
Security hull breached. Hostile alien life forms inbound.
Look at this big empty room.
It kind of looks like this game was
matter.
abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets. But ultimately, we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin.
Oh, shit.
I
So,
love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
Davey, like the character Davey, not obviously the real Davey, but whatever. He kept that room closed until he was done talking, which is what I can do as a Let's Player. But anyway, that's so interesting. And that's not something I even noticed when I was playing it the first time. Alright, let's jam. Can I run?
Apparently, the space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
He's not even letting us do the labyrinth.
This is the part
like,
that's
already.
The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Hey,
He already...
you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Alright, I'm gonna make sure Davey's not gonna start talking. This is interesting. It's almost like dueling, like, pianos right now. Like, I want to say something, but Davey is busy saying something before me. But, so, when I first played this game...
Unfortunately, the only option is to step into the beam.
Wonderful, Davey. Thank you for telling us. So, when I first played this game, the first kind of, like, inclination I got that maybe the person he's talking about is actually a woman is the fact that the voiceover in this game is a woman like saying like step into the beam and give yourself or whatever. And I was like, okay. Oh, he closed the door. That's interesting. I kind of feel like one thing we have to like look out for in this game, and is kind of fun to look for, is when Davy like closes off spaces. Because when you first play it, you might think that's how the game was created. But once you realize that Davy is in control of everything, and like he wouldn't even let you do the labyrinth, then he'll close off doors and not let you get back through. And I think that's kind of interesting too.
What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Oh, so he's basically forcing us to go back and play it a different way. All right. I didn't close the door that time. That's interesting. So, if he didn't close the door this time, this might be the Davy version of it. Okay. This is neat. I love this part. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole game.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Alright. Is he going to start talking yet? Okay. So, I think I've decided that the most fun way to play this game is to pretend like we're taking Davy by face value. Because if the game is some kind of commentary on commentary, or it's this like... Okay. This meta thing, right?
Yep. In this game, you can only walk backwards.
Then it's impossible for us to figure out like what Davy was actually doing, or if he's just having fun. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have fun with this game. Here's another clue to me that Coda was actually a lady. A lot of the pronouns are female. And I think that's just interesting. I think there's just something to think about. But also, it may not be. It's just how we're feeling.
So it's
we're just playing this game how we feel.
Minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Coda's trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
Oh, that's cool. It's hard to control, sorry. What does he want from me now? I also think it's funny how this game is kind of hard to do a let's play of, because it's hard to telegraph when Davy's going to start talking. Whereas, like, even Portal, you kind of know when Wheatley's going to talk, and he's like, all right, see ya. And you're like, okay. And another thing to think about with this is, like, maybe these were just games. Maybe...
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Like, okay, so if we were pretending that Coda's a real person, which is fun, it's possible that these are just games. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to write creatively or even draw, but sometimes you just do worm-ups just for fun.
And that's
just to see what you can do.
The meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
So these could all be warm-ups, basically, if Coda was real.
Oftentimes, Coda would put bizarre titles like
and
this
our
one
sweet
at the
boy
start of his
Davey
games.
took it as, like, high art. Oh, man.
I wish
so
I'd
I
known
know
him at
for
the
a
time
fact
that
this
he was
is...
making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
See, and that's another fun thing about this, is that Davey is outright telling us that he does not agree with Coda. That even though Coda does these for fun and just kind of like leaves it, Davey doesn't feel like that is something that needs to happen. And so he'll not only save all of these and show them to the world, but he like perverts them in a way. He's changing how they play.
Once you've been
He's
slowed
skipping
to an
ahead to
absolute
areas
crawl,
that he thinks
the
are
door at the top
boring.
of the
Like,
stairs opens.
it's wild.
So why, if Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter,
Here we go.
it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
We're gonna just try to make it. We're not gonna go right away because I would like to talk. And Davey talks too. This is very interesting to try to do a Let's Play. So Davey skips through things for you, but is that really any different than a Let's Player who does jump cuts through stuff that they think might be boring, you know? It's not all that different. It's not all that different. I guess for me the difference is that, like, no, it's not that different. The biggest problem I have with gamers is they feel like they own properties and IPs, you know? And they don't. It doesn't belong to them. It's just something they like. See, like, these little things are almost like warm-ups for creative writing.
And nice and filled with little ideas for games.
Yeah.
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
This is interesting. Like, how do I... He just decides when I leave that room. I didn't get to decide when I leave that room, which I think is interesting, too. Oh, man. You know, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to play this or not. Because I was worried it was going to bum me out. The first time I played it, it really bummed me out. And it made me kind of mad. And even though I pretty much knew that Coda wasn't real, and, like, this was just, like, one of Davey's weird kind of concepts, it still upset me because it
this
felt
is new for Coda. It's an actual
like
puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
it felt like he was intruding on someone else's shit, and that made me so mad. And I know that, like, maybe this is about how everyone who plays a game and talks about that game is going to intrude on some shit. But I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know if I actually know how to solve this puzzle. There's supposed to be a thing in here that I can touch. Oh well. Maybe Davey will just do it for us. Do you think he would? This game is really hard to talk about. It's really hard. And I think those of us who have played it and enjoyed it still like it and probably still play it every once in a while like I do. But it really did not have the hit that Stanley Parable did, because Stanley Parable is more about fun. This is insidious. This is like a horror story where you're the bad guy. Oh, I got in. It's all good.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon. We're going to see it a lot.
Yeah. It takes the fun out of games in a way.
That seems to be it, right?
And it fills you
walk
with
down a corridor,
dread.
you solve
And
the
yet
puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough. All right,
playing it
now I'm
is
going to
really
modify the
something
game again,
special,
so that
and I
when you
haven't
press
figured out why
enter,
that is.
It'll remove all of the walls from this room.
See, he modified this game again. Isn't that awful?
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
It's so upsetting. It's quite upsetting.
Aha. So this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the Stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that
Not
all of his games are
necessarily,
meant
bro.
to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
Oh, I don't remember this one at all. Let's go figure it out. Oh, I don't remember this one at all. Holy shit. Huh.
Let's talk about video game development for a second. Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do. So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development.
So you know in how...
To make all of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
Alright, let's see if he's done talking, huh?
The tools
No.
available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games, to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
Alright, let's start following him. Let's see if I think he's done talking. What I wanted to say was, in other games, you know how if a character's talking, you can always, nope out of that conversation? Or, for example, you'll be running and you know there's a cutscene coming up, but the guy's already talking, so you run a little faster so you can skip whatever that guy was saying so you can get to the cutscene faster. This game doesn't let you do that. Davy is in full control. You have to listen to everything he says. There's no skipping because you're running too fast. He'll stop you from going into the next thing and skipping over his dialogue. So, like, in a way, he's, like, almost hindering your ability as a gamer because he's in control and you're not. And I think that's really fun and scary.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
Like, I didn't say we can skip that.
This is something that
he's not just taking away,
you know, whether a game ought to actually
Coda's like
whether
vision.
It means anything,
it's not just about that.
And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere.
Yeah, it's a little scary, but I mean, this is the kind of mentality that you have if you're a super fan of a game franchise. How many times have I played Inquisition? A lot. I've played Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition, probably, oh god, maybe 10 times all the way through with a bunch of unfinished ones. And I have actually gone through, okay, so like there's this secret Dorian Iron Bull romance, and you can, so there's a secret Iron Bull Dorian romance, and the only way to get it is if you go on certain quests with a certain amount of people in the certain lands and do it enough times, and you can get their romance started so that they like fall in love. And even in Trespasser, the DLC, talk about it. But you have to commit to it. It doesn't always happen very naturally. And I've done that, you know? So I can't sit and be like, this character, Davy, playing all of these games to see if there's a gag somewhere. Is that really different than me? I know exactly how the Iron Bull Dorian romance plays out, but I want it to happen in my game. So I overplay it so that I can get this outcome that I want, you know? Whoop. Oh, I did this wrong, huh? Whoop, there we go.
There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over. But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
He's like, we don't know precisely. Sorry, this music is so loud. Hold on a second. Yeah. I guess you can play through the whole game without him talking, which I also think is interesting. But I'm gonna turn this down just a little bit. So yeah, we're getting deeper and deeper into this game, and we see Davy messing with more and more shit.
Here, Coda begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities. Use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on your keyboard to respond.
The worst thing about this is that you start to look at Coda's games as a response to how Davy behaves and talks about Coda's games. And you can't necessarily do that because that's the issue that we're having with Davy right now. Like, we're not supposed to look too deeply into something for someone that we don't know, you know? And our only point of reference for Coda is what Davy tells us. So we have no idea if these games are a way to communicate with him, kind of passive-aggressively, or if they're just games. They're just games that were made. We don't know. And that's like a thing that you have to keep telling yourself as you play it. I think I don't know. It's just human nature to see something that you love and try to interpret it through your own lens. But I think it's also important to try to listen to people.
It's a lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason, Coda fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out. I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're going to see it in the work as well. His games are just going to become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
So maybe we start thinking about what Davy's already shown to us as far as his character and what he's capable of doing, and maybe think of that speech in a different light. No pun intended.